All right, let's dive right in. Have you ever been listening to someone with an Indian English accent? And even though you understand every single word they're saying, you feel kind of lost? Well, you are definitely not alone. So today, we're going to break it all down and give you a clear roadmap to understanding with confidence. Yeah, I hear this all the time. It's probably one of the most common pieces of feedback I get. And you know what? It's a totally valid feeling. It can be super frustrating when the words are familiar, but the music of the language, the accent, and the rhythm just feels out of sync. So, the very first thing we have to do is a little mindset shift. Let's get this out of the way right now. Indian English isn't wrong English, not at all. It's a completely valid, structured dialect with its own history and its own rules, just like American, British, or Australian English. Okay, so if it's a valid dialect, what are we actually talking about? What is Indian English, really? Let's pin down a solid definition so we're all on the same page. The easiest way to think about it is like this. English has a bunch of different flavors all over the world. Indian English is just one of those flavors. It's got its own distinct accent, a totally different rhythm, and some unique words and phrases. It's just another member of the global English family. So, where do things start to sound different? Well, the first and most obvious hurdle for most people is pronunciation. This is usually the first thing our ears kind of stumble over. And if we're talking pronunciation, let's zoom in on one sound that's a classic hallmark of the Indian English accent, the T sound. See, in a lot of American English, we get kind of lazy with it, we soften it, but not here. In Indian English, that T is pronounced very clearly, very distinctly. A perfect example is the word water. In the US, you'll almost always hear water. That T in the middle becomes a soft D sound. We call it a flap T. But in Indian English, it stays a hard T, water. Can you hear that crisp T sound? That's the key. And we see the exact same thing with a word like better. An American will often say better, but in Indian English, you'll hear both of those T's pop, better. Once you start listening for that clear, sharp T, you'll start noticing it absolutely everywhere. Okay, so we've got the individual sounds down, but the next piece of this puzzle is the rhythm, the actual music of the language. This isn't about what sounds you make, but how they're timed and spaced out. Indian English has what linguists call a syllable-timed rhythm. Now that's a fancy term, but all it really means is that each syllable gets a roughly equal amount of time and emphasis. It creates this very even, almost staccato beat, which is way different from the kind of up and down roller coaster rhythm of American English. Let's use the word computer as a test case. In American English, we put all the energy on that one middle syllable, right? Computer. The other parts are kind of rushed. But in syllable-timed Indian English, it's much more even. Computer. Each part gets its moment, and that tiny difference in timing is totally fundamental to how it sounds. All right, so we've covered sounds and we've covered rhythm. The third place you might get a little confused is vocabulary, because sometimes it's not the accent at all. It's just that they're using a different word for the exact same thing you're thinking of. And once you know these, they're actually pretty simple. So an American might live in an apartment, but someone in India is more likely to live in a flat. You take a vacation, they take a holiday. You use an eraser to fix a mistake, they'll use a rubber. The meaning? Identical. It's just a different label for the same item. Okay, so theory is great, but now that we know the key differences, how do we actually get better at understanding it all? Let's move from just talking about it to actually doing something about it with a clear, practical guide. You can really break this down into 4 simple steps. First, get daily exposure. Just listen, watch Indian news, find some YouTubers you like, just let your brain get used to the sounds. Second, don't try to catch every single word. That'll just stress you out. Instead, just listen for the main keywords to get the general idea. Third, a really great exercise is to actively compare accents. Find a clip of the same sentence and listen to how it's said differently. And finally, practice with a teacher. Actually repeating sentences out loud helps connect what your ear is hearing with what your mouth is doing. Phew. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, from pronunciation and rhythm all the way to vocabulary. So if you're going to walk away from this with just one single, most important thing to remember, what is it? It's this. This is the main takeaway. Stop thinking of Indian English as difficult. Start thinking of it as just different. It has its own logic. It has its own patterns. And once you start to recognize those patterns, understanding becomes completely 100% achievable with a bit of practice. And that really leaves us with one last question to chew on. When we hear an accent, any accent at all, what are we really hearing? Is it just a collection of different sounds, or is it a person's history, their culture, their unique way of seeing the world, all wrapped up in the way they speak? Something to think about. Thanks so much for listening.